What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show with me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com, and it is another preview for the PFL this week as the fifth show of the 2022 regular season goes down. The heavyweights are back in action here, and the featherweights, as well as some of the biggest and brightest and best stars in the PFL come out. It's a pretty good card. Again, we saw, obviously we had the card last week, which was pretty good on paper and delivered as well, but we have another pretty good one here. My favourite PFL fighter in Bruno Cappelozza is on the card in the main event, but we will get into that fight as well. Renan Loughnane is on the card, who everyone obviously know from over in Manchester and from, you know, being a standout in the UK scene for a long time, and then getting to the Dana White contender series, obviously, and we know what happened there, where he got the late takedown in a fight that he was absolutely dominating, and Dana White decided insanely kind of not to sign him. And some other fighters as well. Chris Wade is on the card, Stevie Ray, Anthony Pettis. So, yeah, a very good card all around. And I'm going to get through it here and get straight into it and talk about it. I'll look at some of the undercard fights first, and then we'll go upwards and we'll look in more detail even at the cards higher up, or the fights even higher up on the card here. First fight on the card is Alejandro Flores against Ryoji Kudo. And if you don't know either of these, especially Kudo, you probably should after his last performance. Obviously, he fought Brendan Loughnane in that very, very close fight, which ended via technical decision in the third round. I was very impressed watching tape of him coming into that fight, and then I was very impressed with him in that fight itself. You know, I'm a big fan of Loughnane. I've interviewed him a couple of times as well. I think he's very, very good, and as I just said in the intro there, I don't think he has gotten a fair shake of it throughout his career, but I think Kudo could be a little bit hard done by how that result went. Now, I scored it the same way, and I thought Loughnane won it, but the fact that it ended and went to a no contest, it was that week or two, you know, where there was no contests all over the place, and he was unlucky a little bit, I think, but it was the correct decision. I'm not saying anything about the judging, but he won most of that fight. It was a close second round. He dominated, obviously, the first round with the big knockdown and everything like that, and then it ended, you know, where Loughnane was kind of ahead in the third round. It was unfortunate, but he's a very good fighter. A counter fighter, but he can also attack and go forward and land big shots as well, which he showed against Loughnane. He's so fast, just really, really fast, powerful. Good takedowns as well, maybe a little bit small for that featherweight division, although he went in there against Loughnane, he didn't look that small. So I think this guy is really, really good, and I'm a big fan of his, and I like his style an awful lot, and he's a guy I think that I would be happy to be previewing in these PFL cards next year or the year after as well, because he's one of those guys you'll never tire of watching. I think he's very, very good. Flores, on the other hand, then I watched a couple of his fights, especially his most recent fight against Saba, Bolaghi, which was great on me because he's fighting on this card as well, so I was able to kill two birds with one stone for that one. And that was his second PFL fight after fighting obviously once last year as well. You know, he won that fight. It won via unanimous decision, but not much happened, honestly, in those 15 minutes. He throws like those front leg stomps, throws a few flying knees. The one thing I would say that is a big issue for him coming in here against Kudo is he kind of stretches in with shots. And if you're stretching in with shots against Kudo, he's going to just step to the side or step back and counter you and hit you with an awful big shot. And that's just not going to end well at all. But the one thing I would say for Flores, he's very varied, you know, changes stances and does lots of different things. But I favour Kudo in this fight, honestly. I think it's going to be a good fight. I think Flores will appreciate maybe the pace that Kudo will put on, and they will both kind of appreciate each other's pace. Sometimes, especially in that last fight, the last Alejandro fight he had, it was kind of against Bolaghi, it was kind of wait. Because Bolaghi, and we didn't see much of it in that fight, and maybe I'll get onto his fight next, but you didn't see much of it in that fight, but he's supposed to be a wrestler, and he didn't wrestle much in that fight, so it kind of turned into 3 rounds of a stand-up fight. So yeah, that Kudo versus Garcia fight, Flores Garcia fight, I think it will be better than Alejandro Flores Garcia's last fight, and I think Kudo will come on out the right side of it. Let's talk about the Saba Bolaghi fight. So he's fighting Bubba Jenkins. Obviously, Bubba's been around for a long time now. First on Bolaghi, as I said again, he's supposed to be a wrestler, they said in the commentary. I didn't see much wrestling out of him, so maybe that's something we will see here against Bubba Jenkins, although it's going to be tough to take down Bubba Jenkins. But Bolaghi, he's this small enough, squat, powerful looking guy. When he does throw, he throws with power and he's athletic. So he's, Yoel Romero, I suppose, is the guy you would look at like that. Although I wouldn't maybe compare him to Yoel Romero. It's very tough on the couple of fights that I watch for him to get a gauge on how good he is and how good he can be. Just again, that low output. If he can up that output a little bit, then you'd give him a chance. But Bubba Jenkins, I think at this stage, you probably have to favour him in this fight. He's a southpaw. Obviously, he has out-wrestled lots of people, including a guy on this card, Lance Palmer. He jumps in with his striking a lot. He's a very effective striker, I would say, when he does throw it. And his last few fights, the difference between maybe Bubba Jenkins over the last few years and his last few fights, I think he's looked very smooth. That Kyle Bochniak fight, he knocked him down at one stage and looked very, very good in that fight. And, he's won every fight in his last, 7 or 8, apart from that Chris Wade fight in the playoffs last year. And I'm sure that's one he'd like to get back again at some stage. But since he's came over to the PFL, he's had a great time, but obviously going 3-1 and beating Lance Palmer and beating Bobby Moffett and beating Kyle Bochniak. But I'm sure he wants to win that $1 million. And this is a good matchup for him, I think, against Bolaghi, and I think it will move him on to where he's going next and move him on maybe to the playoffs later on in this year. But yeah, that is a fight. Look, it's a fight that having watched Bolaghi in that one fight, right? I think, that's an easy fight for Jenkins, but I don't think we saw as much out of Bolaghi in that fight as he has, if you get me. So it might be one of those ones where you wait and see on this one and see how it goes. But I'm not sure about that one. I'm honestly not sure about that one. I mentioned Lance Palmer there, and obviously he's on this card as well, and he's fighting Sheymon Moraes, which is next fight we can talk about here. Lance, as well as we've seen him, he's a southpaw, has lovely outside leg kicks, heavy wrestler, but obviously the Bubba Jenkins fight was it was a tough fight for him in terms of the wrestling, even though he still won it. But I think against Sheymon Moraes, I think he'd be bringing back the wrestling here. Honestly, Moraes is a power striker, but he waits an awful lot for it. He's very accurate. Another guy who you'd like watching, and he's the type of guy where if he lands that big shot, it's gonna maybe he'll knock you out and it'll be a great win for him, but he's also the type of guy that makes guys kind of scared because he's just waiting and waiting and waiting, and you don't want to do it. And I don't mean scared as in they're scared to take a shot or scared to fight or anything. I mean like scared to do their own game because they're kind of playing into his game, which is very, very dangerous, dangerous to your game plan and dangerous to your ability to win a fight. So Moraes kind of does that a lot. And maybe he hasn't had the success over the last few years that someone with his skill set deserves. He did beat Boston Salmon the last time out, and he won 2 fights before that. He obviously lost to Brendan Loughnane in his PFL debut after, having a pretty good stint of going 2-3 in the UFC, but he only lost to Magomed Sharapov, best look in his retirement, obviously, Sadiq Yusuf and Andre Fili as well. So top guys, relatively top guys, I suppose, over there in the UFC. So I like Moraes, honestly, and I think, I don't know what I pick him this, but I think it could be a bit of a tough fight, or a bit of a slippy one for Lance Palmer. Lance is another guy as well who is 34 years of age now. He's had 28 fights, lost his last 3 in a row, lost to Wade, Kabolov and Jenkins. And I've said it with another couple of guys as well, and Lance Palmer is probably the best example, but like at a certain stage, in a format like PFL, I think there's a certain stage, you've won it a couple of times, you've done very well a couple of times, and it's almost time to move on because you're just kind of doing the same thing over and over again. In the UFC, it's a little bit different. You can go up a division, you can do that here as well, I suppose, but your next fight is a title fight. Your next fight is, if you are the champion, you're looking for 2 or 3 title defenses. You're looking to earn big money. You're getting the pay-per-view bonus. Whereas when you win the PFL title, the season ends and then you start off the same as everyone else and you're trying to win that title again and win the £1 million. Now at the end of the day, if you win the £1 million, all is well and good. You've earned a lot of money. But that must be hard to do over and over again, to kind of start from the start and go back and try to reach the same goal you just reached. So I think it's a good thing for the PFL in one way, because you don't want things getting stale or whatever. But in another way, then you're probably going to be losing fighters, or your top fighters not maybe going to be performing as well as you think they would. So I think a few guys need to move on from PFL, maybe go somewhere else, maybe even then come back to PFL or something like that. But I think Lance Palmer maybe at this stage of his career might be better off moving on after this and seeing what he can do, because I think he's achieved a lot in the PFL, and maybe it's time for him to go on. But I'm not writing him off as a fighter or anything. Maybe he could go to the UFC or maybe go to Bellator or somewhere like that and have a few fights. And conversely, then I'd like to see a few guys from Bellator and the UFC come over and fight in the PFL. So that's my thoughts on that anyway. But that fight against Sheymon Moraes, it should be a good one. Let's talk about Brendan Loughnane and Boston Salmon. I usually leave Brendan to the top of the card, but I see him here, and obviously this is the way the card is in Sherdog. We'll see obviously I'm recording this a little bit early, but we'll see during the week where they actually line out. Brendan probably be higher up the card, I would guess, although sometimes they put him on lower down the card so the people in his home country can watch, and me obviously over here in Ireland a little bit earlier, which I do appreciate and I think is actually probably pretty smart, and which other people should do as well. But Brendan Loughnane against Boston Salmon, I went back and I watched a bit of Boston Salmon. You hear the name Boston Salmon, right? And it's a name that you'll remember. He obviously fought in the UFC a couple of times, ended up losing. He fought in the Contender Series, and he's been around since 2014-ish, fought in RFA and other places, and he'd a bit of a reputation, I suppose, as a very good fighter, and he's had some setbacks, obviously, but lost to Sheymon Moraes in last time out, and I was coming in here against Loughnane, and honestly, watching that fight against Sheymon Moraes, I was impressed with him. I think he's a good fighter. A southpaw who kind of changes things up a lot in the fight, can kind of do it all. I think he reaches in an awful lot with power shots, which, if he can land the power shots is great, but if he can't, he is able to get hit on the counter. I think he gets an awful... he kind of falls into shots sometimes and gets off balance an awful lot. A little bit like Flores kind of does as well at times. And if you do that against someone like Loughnane and he's kind of on it, he will hurt you. And that's where Loughnane at his best, I think, is actually very good as well at times. Now, Loughnane, his last fight, I mentioned against Ryoji Kudo, wasn't his best performance. He looked injured in that fight, and then I think it was Malky Cow, his manager, afterwards said he was injured, and Brendan didn't really say it, and then he said a knee injury, and it's not that far away from that. So I wonder, is that a knee injury he had a few weeks before? It was kind of healing. He's like, I'll make it, and I will be better for this one, or is it a knee injury that he's going to bring throughout the year? I don't know, and it'll be very, very interesting to see how he looks, first of all, if he's wearing a knee brace or anything like that coming into this fight. This is one of these fights I probably won't be betting on until I maybe see him walking into the cage, but we will obviously talk more on the betting show maybe this week about it. But I would favour Brendan Loughnane to win this fight. I think he's a better all-around fighter. I think he is a more kind of stable, fundamental fighter than Salmon. Now, Salmon is good. I won't take back what I said about him. He's definitely a very, very good fighter. But I just think if Brendan Loughnane kind of keep him at the end of his jab, force Salmon to try to push his way in, let him do that, avoid it, and counter him. I think Brendan Loughnane can win that fight all day. Now, the biggest issue with that is it was a similar matchup, I think, for Kudo, although I think Kudo is probably a little bit better. If he's not at his athletic best, if he's not as fast as he can be, if he's not as nimble, if he's still injured, that is a big issue, because someone like Salmon is a very tough matchup for someone like that. And if Loughnane isn't at 100% his best, it's a very tough matchup. So I'm interested to see that. There's a lot of unknowns coming into that one. And either way, even Loughnane at his best, I think someone like Salmon would probably actually bring the best out of him as well because of the way he fights. So it's an interesting fight. I'm really looking forward to that one and seeing how it goes. So that's 4 featherweight fights. Obviously, to kick it off there, the Kudo, Flores fight, Salmon, Loughnane, Palmer, Moraes, and Bolaghi versus Jenkins, which I talked about. Let's talk about a few heavyweight fights. Ali Isaev comes back here and he's fighting Jamelle Jones. Isaev 9-0 in his career. He hasn't fought since he won the championship back in 2019. He beat Denis Gostilov in the semi-finals, I believe it was there. And I watched that fight just before we recorded here, and this guy is a problem. He is very good. They were talking in the commentary about how he throws spinning back kicks, and I was like, oh really? And then I saw a few of them. I was like, okay, well, maybe he can. So very athletic, but a very good, very good striker, but a very good ground game as well. Can take guys to the ground. Took Gostilov down and dominated on top. Gostilov almost caught him in a submission at one stage, but he was able to get back on top again and land a lot of shots. So this guy is really good. Whereas Jamelle Jones, he's a good fighter as well, but he got knocked out very quickly last time out. He's 12-8 in his career, knocked out by Henrique, obviously, and was knocked out by my guy Bruno Cappelozza before that. But he did beat Klidson Abreu, who's a very good fighter, and he knocked him out a few times as well. So, he knocked him out once, but he has 3 knockout wins in a row. Before that, he fought William Knight, and he got knocked out in that fight. So he's one of these guys. Look, his last 6 results: got knocked out, won by knockout, won by knockout, got knocked out. So he's all in the first and second round. So we know what's going to happen here, lads. I would say someone's probably getting knocked out. Although Ali Isaev is the type of guy who, he might take you down, he might hurt you, he might be looking to get a bit of time back in the cage. The fact he's been out since 2019, which is 3 years now actually. It's seeing as we've 2022. So he's a player here. He's absolutely a player in this division, and if he can get a big win here, he'll be looking for obviously an early finish, I would say, to get more points. And if he can do that, it will be very good for him, and for I would say the PFL as well, to be happy enough to keep him to keep him towards the top of their division. We will have a look at the standings here in a second as well on the PFL, because it'll be interesting to see how we'll do that now all together, because we have the featherweights and the heavyweights obviously coming in here. But before we get to more of the heavyweights, let's just look at the featherweight standings. So Sheymon Moraes is 1-0 on 3 points. There's actually 5 fighters on 3 points and 1-0. So Moraes, Flores, Wade, Jenkins on Loughnane, and then we've Kudo, Bochniak, Palmer, Bolaghi, and Salmon, all of whom obviously are fighting this weekend. We'll talk more about a couple of those fights in a second. And in a heavyweight, we have 3 fighters on 6, 1 fighter on 5, and 1 fighter on 3. Obviously, Ferreira, Gostilov, and Cappelozza are all on 6. We've Ante on 5, with Abreu on 3, Matheus Scheffel, Austin Gillette, and Jamelle Jones all 0-1 and are on 0 points. So Jamelle Jones is fighting Isaev. I'm actually not sure. I'll have to check that out. Is that in the competition or not? I don't know. But I guess, was Isaev supposed to be in it? And did we change in short notice? I don't know. We'll find out anyway, and we will let you know, and I'm sure the PFL will let you know as well. But yeah, that's how it stands. Very close, very close there with the guys towards the top. So those lads with 0 points will have to be getting wins here very quickly to turn it around. So Another guy who's not in the standings here, but is fighting against one of the guys in the standings in the heavyweight division, is Sam K, who is fighting Denis Gotsalov. I always call him Gostilov. His name is Goltsov. I always mess that up, but one thing I don't mess up is how good of a fighter he is. As I mentioned, okay, he lost to Isaev, but he has some good wins in the PFL back down through the years. He's been fighting there for a good while since 2019. You know, he's ran into some good fighters, Ante, Delija and Isaev, but he's won all these other fights there. Beat Cody Goodell earlier on this year. So he's obviously a very good wrestler. Will take you down, will submit you, will TKO you if needs be, and it's just, you know, an absolute animal on the ground when the fight gets there. He's fighting Sam K, who is making his debut in the PFL, and I watched a couple of his fights. He's from Australia. I don't know if this guy an NRL player, because I looked up Sam K and there was a Sam K NRL player and there was highlights. I'm not sure if it's the same lad or not, but he seemed, after watching a few of his fights over in Australia, he seems like a big star. He seemed like a lot of people came out to watch him. And on his fights himself, he's 8-5 in his career, but his last two fights, you know, he seems like a guy who's maybe been out of the cage for a while, came back, turned himself around, and is now kind of going in a different direction. And we'll quickly find out here against Goltsov, because if he's not at that level, that will be shown very, very quickly. He's a good boxer, got a big knockout in his last fight, and the fight before that, got a big takedown, or maybe a couple of fights before that, sorry. Got a big takedown, big elbows. This guy will make it a painful night for you wherever he takes it. And I like him. I think his skills are very, very good. That 8-5 record obviously is a bit dodgy. So we will, dodgy in terms of like he's had 13 fights and lost 5 of them, if we're being realistic about it. And at heavyweight as well, in the local scene, that's difficult. But he said he's found it hard to get fights and different things like that. So this should be a good fight here. The next one, Ante Delija against Stuart in the heavyweight division. Honestly, I don't have too much to say about this one, because I think it's going to be a bit of a walkover for Ante Delija. This guy is one of the best, one of the best heavyweights in the world, I'll say it. I think he's right up there. I think if he was in the UFC or other places, he'd be top 15. He's long, he races in with big strikes, he's a good long jab, willing to clinch, very good wrestler, hard ground him on, I always say it. He has that Croatian flag alongside him, but he's a very good wrestler as well. Stuart Austin, he's not very good, if we're being honest. He has submitted Tom Aspinall, but that was early in Tom Aspinall's career. He comes in with his head up in the air, kind of panics when striking a little bit. Does throw a nice hard leg kick. He can wrestle as well, so maybe Delija won't be able to get him down that easy. But I think he will, honestly. And I think I would be unbelievably surprised if Stuart Austin won around here, and especially surprised if he won the fight. So I think Delija will win this, and I think he will go on and he will be in the playoffs later on this year. Fight I'm massively looking forward to is Henrique Ferreira against Klidson Abreu. Abreu is a southpaw, but he switches stances. Although, do you know what? I don't know if he is a southpaw, because he came out southpaw in his last fight, I believe it was, that I watched of him, and then he almost immediately switched. He didn't really switch back so much, so I'd written down southpaw, and I was like, is he a southpaw? But he's a switch hitter, I think, more than anything else. Do you know what as well? He doesn't look that athletic, but he is. He throws some nice shots, well-timed takedowns, and obviously his jiu-jitsu is phenomenal when he gets the fight to the ground. He's brilliant there, and he will be looking to do that against Henrique Ferreira, who is an athletic freak, throws these big front kicks, massive, big, tall man, can jab well, has a big right hand, and is powerful. So I think Abreu, this is a simple one to me to break down. Abreu will be looking to get that double leg, take him, or the single leg even, take him to the ground and win it there, whereas Ferreira will be looking to keep it standing and land those big head kicks, maybe even not throw too many head kicks in case he gets taken down, but land those shots standing and win it there. And if he does, there are him versus Cappelozza down the line, or him versus some of these other heavyweights. It's going to be very, very fun. He's won all his fights in the PFL so far. Beating Stuart Austin in 31 seconds and 25 seconds. He beat Jamelle Jones in his last two, and this guy is legit. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him this weekend and going forward as well. So that to me is probably the standout heavyweight fight on this card. I'm the last featherweight fight here, and there's one more heavyweight fight, but there's a lightweight fight in here as well. Chris Wade against Kyle Bochniak in the featherweight division. Very, very interesting fight here between these two lads. Chris Wade, obviously he's a very good wrestler, we know all about that, but he kicks more than he punches. He kicks very well, which means, you know, he'll either be taken down or he'll get into a kind of a takedown match when you kick that much, especially low. Very, very strong. I would say he was a good striker. I think he's an improved striker and he throws more than his opponents normally do. But against Bochniak, that might not be the case. He throws a lot of shots, but he does end up getting caught by that. And he's fighting against Jeremy Kennedy. He got taken down, and you would think Chris Wade would probably be able to do the same to him. He throws a good right hand. He did get hurt in that last fight against it was Bubba Jenkins, wasn't he? Yeah. So you'd have to favour Chris Wade here. I think he will have enough on the feet as long as he doesn't kind of get drawn into a war and it isn't the back and forth, whereas Bochniak might like that. But I think Wade will probably have enough to take him down as well and probably win rounds here. So maybe not the standout fight. If Bochniak can turn it into the fight he wants to turn it into, it might be a standout fight, but I think Wade will win this with a lot of wrestling. Then in the co-main, Anthony Pettis against Stevie fucking Ray, as I can say it here. I'm allowed to say it here. You know, Stevie's had a very, very good career for a guy, you know, coming out of Scotland. Obviously, he's had a lot of fights. 32 years of age now. He's had 33 fights. Obviously, lost to Alex Martinez in his opener in PFL, but had a good stint in the UFC. You know, he beat Michael Johnson in his last fight in the UFC. He beat Joe Lozon, beat Ross Pearson as well. So he's not a guy that was in the UFC and you know, okay, he lost these few fights, but he didn't struggle necessarily. He won a lot of fights as well, and he was very good on the cage warrior scene, and even fighting in Bama and other places back in the day. He's had a very, very good career, and you know, he's the type of guy who can do it all. He's got knockout power. You know, he almost won by submission in his last fight, even when he was down. Good on the ground, good everywhere. And you probably say the same, obviously, for Anthony Pettis, who, you know, I think, look, there's a blueprint there to beat Anthony Pettis. And can Stevie Ray do it? I don't know. The blueprint to beat Anthony Pettis is to go straight forward at him, land lots of shots, don't give him time to counter, push him against the cage, land lots of shots against the cage, take him down. Be very careful because he's a fantastic game on the ground. He's really good submissions, more submissions in the UFC than he had knockouts, if I'm not mistaken. And so you have to be very careful there. But Pettis' inability to circle has really destroyed the latter part of his career for me, along with Rafael dos Anjos and that awful beating he took. But Stevie Ray needs to prey on that. He needs to push that pace. He really needs to push the pace, make it tough on Pettis. Pettis is another guy though who never gives up. He's always there late in fights. You know, has different ways to win. He's a finisher, but Stevie Ray is not without a chance here. I think, I don't know if Stevie has that game that can pull that off against Pettis without getting caught. That would be my one worry for him. I think he needs to throw in a few takedowns here. I think he needs to get Pettis thinking. And if he can do that, it might be a tough, long night for Anthony Pettis over 3 rounds. I feel like this one's going to be a close decision, honestly. Now, maybe Pettis can get the big finish and maybe can catch a guillotine or something like that, or get a big head kick knockout. But Stevie Ray is tough. You know, he's not an easy out by any means. Okay, he's been finished a couple of times in his career, most of them by submission, only been knocked out twice. You know, and he could make it a tough fight for Pettis, but I don't know. I would slightly favour Pettis in this one, if I'm being honest. And in the main event, we have my guy Bruno Cappelozza against Matheus Scheffel. First of all, on Scheffel, he is I would call him a glitchy counter striker. He got knocked down a few times against Ante Delija. He's fought in the Dana White Contender Series. Not that impressive there, honestly. He had one fight outside in the regional scene, ended up winning that in a few minutes, and then got into the PFL, and as I mentioned, got knocked down a couple of times against Ante Delija. I think he's going to get absolutely styled on here by Bruno Cappelozza. Cappelozza's been on a great run over the last while, won his last 5 after losing to the UFC light heavyweight champion Yuri Prochazka back in 2018. Sorry, he's at 5 or 6, 1, 2, 3, 5. Yeah, beat Austin, beat Ante, beat Jamelle Jones, beat Mohamed Doris and Ante again back into the 2021 season. So I know he's beaten Klidson Abreu back in jungle fights as well. This guy is really, really good, and he's turned around his career. You know, he had 5 losses in his first 10 or 11 fights or something like that. So to turn around his career like that and to become the fighter he's become is really, really great. He's very athletic for a heavyweight. He's sustained, fast, powerful attacks. I always say it, but he reminds me of a younger JDS that throws more volume, hits like an absolute truck. And Matheus Scheffel will get hit like a truck this weekend, unfortunately, and will almost certainly get knocked out by Bruno Cappelozza. So that's my breakdown of this card. All in all, it's a pretty good card. Obviously, always fun to see the heavyweights on show. I think there will be some more good wins for some of the top guys over there. I think I really think Cappelozza is going to win that. Abreu Ferreira fight should be fun. Ante I think will get the win as well there in the heavyweight division, and in the featherweights as well. You know, be interesting to see if their guys, you know, the name guys there, Chris Wade, Bubba Jenkins, Brendan Loughnane can get the wins, but some of the underdogs are definitely live here as well. And obviously Anthony Pettis against Stevie Ray in the lightweight division should be a fun one here after what we saw last week, in a big important fight there as well. Alright everyone, that is it from me. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.